That was very
It's
clever of you, Heather.
like that transition.
Abrupt.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been tuning into a lot of interesting webinars talking about bias in cataloging terms. And I watched the wonderful documentary Change the Subject about the subject heading illegal aliens. It's available to watch for free. Highly recommended.
Let's see. Let me write that.
Yeah, let me see if I can quickly find the site.
Yeah, my neighborhood's pretty relaxed about things like that. Everyone is a little different and no one gets too worried about it.
I wear my African, I've bought a couple of African dresses that I will wear out, but I know that as soon as I wear it, I'm going to get looks like, what? Where are you from? It's like, I just like it. I love it. It's beautiful. I do wear them like when I was at elementary school librarian. If we did anything for like Africa culture, I'm like, I'm wearing my dress.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Aly, for putting a link to the documentary in the chat.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, last time we had a question about BIBFRAME, and I did discover some resources. So I am going to start putting some links in the chat. And I will be sure to capture these for the webinar recording as well. The Library of Congress has a great page that links to all kinds of introductory materials and webinars and things like that. There's that one. And then I did find a presentation by Joy Nelson and Jesse Weaver. And that can be streamed there. And there is a page on the Koha community wiki that looked interesting. Oh yeah, and then Terry Reese, who does MARCEdit, who I believe never sleeps, has a blog post on MARCEdit and BIBFRAME. And for those just joining us, we were having an interesting discussion too about bias in cataloging terms, discussions about that, decolonizing the catalog. So does anybody have any questions or comments about either of those topics or anything else they'd like to bring up this month? I think everybody's checking out links right now.
That and trying to think of something interesting to say about cataloging bias other than, yeah, I know it's there.
Well, if it's just going well, yay.
Last week, I was at a talk on bias in charting notes as in a patient record. And there are a lot of things that are standard medical terminology, but don't public don't quite understand, like, patient denies this condition or denies drug use or admits drug use, admits non-compliance with medications. And now that patients are allowed to see notes in real time, there's the old joke about the husband's in the hospital and can't breathe well. His wife comes in, looks at the chart that's hanging at the end of the bed, which you no longer do, and she says, "What have you been doing to the nurses? They've written SOB on your chart."
Well, another thing I wanted to be sure to mention is in September, we're going to have a slightly different schedule because of the koha-US Con. The conference program is up, and I'm sure all of us are really looking forward to it. I'll put a link in the chat. So we're going to have a special cataloging SIG session on Thursday, the 23rd at 1 p.m. Pacific, which I believe, well, I'm not even going to try. I've only had a little bit of coffee. 1 p.m. Pacific. It's on the conference schedule. Check the schedule. So right now, our normal regular meeting slot Thursday, it would be Thursday, September 2nd, is still on the koha-US calendar. I'm going to keep an eye on that. It's probably going to be taken off the calendar and then we won't meet. But if it's on the calendar still, I'll at least show up. Maybe we'll have a little chat, a little social, a little coffee. We'll see what happens. Oh, I forgot to send out an email yesterday about our meeting today, but I made myself a really big note about sending out an email on Wednesday, September 1st to let everybody know what's up with our schedule. Hey, Jason.
Hey, so I was planning on canceling all of those, but if you guys want to meet twice next month, that's totally okay. So it's up to you what we do with the meeting on the 2nd. So do you want me to remove it or do you want me to leave it there? Group, Heather.
At this point, I'd say, why don't you leave it there? Because if nobody has anything to chat about, we could at least have a coffee. And if someone does have something that comes up, cataloging is one of those things that sometimes you've got the problem and you really want to get things done. So we could go ahead and keep the meeting slot and just see how it goes.
Works for me. I'll leave it
Great.
there.
Cool. Well, speaking of which, I'm guessing nobody has anything super pressing cataloging wise. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and we can just, have a coffee if we want.
Actually,
you do have something?
I have some, but I was waiting for other.
Oh, no. I'll keep recording. What's up, Lauren?
So I'm cleaning records, and as I'm doing it, I'm finding all this stuff. So I have a lot of questions that I have been accumulating over the month because I've been working on something else and I find a problem. I'm like, oh, I'll ask at the.
Hey, ask away.
And when I have time to do it, I'll actually have an answer. So the first one is, we're trying to make it easier for our librarians with the 856 link. And we're trying to standardize the text that appears. Instead of all 23 libraries and multiple librarians having their own way of doing it. And in doing so, we're like, all right, there's some things in which they have to ask permission from the local librarian if they can have access to a PDF or whatever for a variety of reasons. We were wanting to put like that's the pre-filled text, but the URL, is there a way to like have an email pop up that would already formulate like all the record information, where the user would, you know, if they're logged in, all they have to do is put, please send me this, or I want this for whatever project, but their name, library, title, record, all that record information would already be in the email. Is that possible? Am I dreaming? Too big of a dream?
That could be handled with a pretty complex mail to link. I mean, some of it could be handled with a mail to link.
That's what I was thinking. If you put a mail to link, does the mail to link work in the 856? I don't know why it wouldn't.
It should. I haven't tried it, but it should. Let's see if we can pull up some information on mail to links.
What are mail to links?
So a normal link that you put in, it's being read at, you know, the HTTP colon. A mail to link is just the word mail to colon, and it generates the system to bring up an email message.
Okay.
See if here's the 856 field from the MARC format. Let's see if we can pull up information on constructing the mail to link.
I found DSF Tricks post about it that talks kind of, I think the tricky part would probably be actually associating what record that's on. So like you would need to pull that into the body of the text or the subject of the text somehow, probably with jQuery. But this talks about how you can construct your link to include a subject and a body.
Could this be done through IP validation instead? That might be easier. Is everyone at a certain location, or are there just certain people who need to send? If I send a link or a request, would I get it, or would I? How does the librarian know? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right now, I guess anyone who goes to the catalog would have access or could post it. I don't know if there's a way to make it where you have to log in. Then you would be a patron, but my patrons are all over the globe, literally. Because I can see the koha information, you'd have to be logged in for that to be populated. I don't see how you could populate that if you just randomly went to the site, found it. I think you'd have to be, especially the library and name information. And it could be that the user just has to do that. But past experience has taught me anything the user has to do usually doesn't always happen. If you want it, populate it.
We don't use the article request module at all from Koha, but I wonder if that would be an alternative option where they could actually make a request that's managed and then the librarian could go in and fill the request.
Okay, where is that?
I think it's something you have to turn on. Like I said, I don't use it, and it's fairly new. I mean, within the past several years.
Okay. Yeah, I ran across it yesterday when I was working with the demo catalog.
Okay.
Here's a
I was working on a different puzzle, so I didn't get it.
I love how when you work on one puzzle, it gives you 3 more
Yes.
puzzles to work on.
Oh, Jennifer in the chat suggests perhaps investigating too the report a problem feature, because that you have to be logged in. And yeah, I think that does track which record it was on. Let's see.
Would that overwhelm the people who are supposed to look at actual problems?
Right now, very few people report problems. The problem would be in a consortium, would it go to the like main global email or to the local library email?
I think that's an option you get to choose from. You can tell it to send it to the admin email or the library, the email of the patron's library. I think if you've got those libraries set up with email addresses in your admin section.
Okay.
Let me try again what I was trying to ask earlier. I've got tripped over something. Okay, let's say the document is library A. And someone at library B wants the document. Can anyone who's registered with library B get to that document, or are there only certain people that can have that document at library A or C or D?
I think it depends. The universal library answer.
Then that's the universal copyright answer.
It depends. I think that's why you'd have to ask the email. We are putting that it's local, ask the local librarian, trying to make it where, okay, only local users. And I think some of them are only local user links because it's on their local server. Their request, I think it depends, because it depends on what they're doing. Because we've got a couple of colleges that are in there, and I think, well, in some of their documents, I think they can give a little bit more freely. They need to know more information than you can get.
Okay.
They can't put it on the website. They know that. That's too free. But it would depend on who they give it to. Yeah, and I'm still learning what all of our libraries have.
This might be something to also bring to the user services circulation group.
Okay.
Because I think that they have a lot more information and experience with authentication and patrons also. But yeah, let us know what you find out.
Okay.
Does anyone have any other ideas?
I did post the blog post to that Bywater wrote about article requests, and I think that might be what you need, because it is like a managed way to control who's getting articles and requesting access. You might be able to work it out so that does what you want. But yeah, I would definitely take a look at that. And the report a problem feature, I think, could work too. I would have the same concerns that maybe you would want to rebrand it somehow. So if you're not getting problem reports anyways, you could just say this is how you request access to that. Change it to say request access to this or something. I don't know.
I think I have another idea. Very low tech.
I like low tech.
All right. Let me share my screen if I can. Okay, you should see your library webpage. And this could go on the Koha page too, but we have interlibrary loans. And this is just a form I designed with some form designing software. Name, email address, position, you can put in anything.
Yeah.
And you check agree, and you low tech, but if I could remember how to run the software, I could do it in 10 minutes.
Ooh, you could do that and then have like somehow where you click the link and it pulls information from the page into the form.
Ooh.
I bet that's doable somehow with magic.
Not by me, but somehow. Or you could just ask them to copy and paste into the form.
And that may be what we end up doing, is just a simple. But I thought I'd ask. Y'all have given me a lot of research to do.
It looks like a lot of options that you could bring to the staff in your consortium to see what might work best. We have turned on the article request feature, and only a few patrons have used it, but it is pretty neat. But oh, that form is shiny, Fred.
As I say, I think I paid $5 for the software, and I might be able to find it again. George, I think you used it for some Koha forms, and you can set it up with the subject line of what you would like and send it to whatever address you'd like. So you can.
Sorry, I'm late, so I don't know what we're talking about.
What was I talking about? Yeah, you'd send it to a particular address. We have it sent to our general WHC library at medstar.net account, and everyone.
You mean the form?
The information from the form, yeah.
Yeah, I used a couple of forms. They both got killed when our WordPress site crashed. But essentially, I had a drop down of all of the libraries, and whoever was filling out the form had to choose a library, and choosing the library specified the email that they were sending the results of the form to.
Yeah, it's fancier than I did.
Well, you don't need a drop down because you've only got one library.
True, but we're talking about a consortium that Lauren's using.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But you could put a form like that on only the libraries where you have to request an article or a document.
So you could leave out the like I said, I'm not 100% sure what we're talking about. So sure, if Fred says that's the way it works, then sure, that's the way it works.
Lauren, do you want to ask your question again now that we've got George here, who knows a lot more about a lot more different things than certainly I do?
Sure. What are you trying to do, Lauren? And sorry for everybody else. Sorry I was late. I was talking to Christopher about barcode scanners and driver's licenses. So.
Oh yeah. Okay, no, I'll ask that later.
Fun. Okay.
It has nothing to do with cataloging, man.
Okay. So we're trying to kind of standardize the text in our 856 link. And one of the options needs to be request this article from your local librarian. And I would like to have in the URL link an email or a form that they fill out. And it would be wonderful, because you know how well users fill out forms, if it would automatically populate the patron's name, the library that they are a member of, the record that they are using.
Yeah, That sounds hard.
Okay. Okay, that's what I wanted. I sometimes dream the impossible dream. So
And this is from someone who actually understands jQuery. So
Yeah, that's asking a lot for the form to copy
okay.
into a document. I'm sure there's a way to do it that's probably beyond my capabilities. So I think if you went the route with finding a way to do that through the article request feature, the advantage of that is that all of the article, if you use the article request, the patron has to be logged in, and so it's automatically going to have all the patron information. So finding a way to get to go from, are these records for actual articles, or are they records for journals that the articles appear in? Or these are links to an outside resource that you've cataloged into Koha, right?
No, these are links to the local library has a PDF copy.
Okay.
But it depends on what you're using it for as to if they can give it to you.
Ah.
The joys of copyright.
Right. Yeah, I understand. So you've cataloged these articles, you've cataloged these PDFs into the library, and the link doesn't go to the PDF. You want a link that goes to the library so that you can determine whether or not that person has permission to access the PDF. Yeah, that to me sounds like a good opportunity for development in Koha. Okay. If there could be a way to say that that's what would really be ideal, is if there was a way that when the patron is logged in, if their home library matches, if their borrower category says that they're allowed to download PDFs from these records or those records, that would be ideal. But that Koha doesn't do that right now. But that would be the ideal thing, is to have an item record that's connected to a library, and the link is in the item record. And so the item record is going to say that this item belongs to this library. And then if the borrower belongs to the same library, then make the link appear so they can just click on the link and download the item. That's what it really would take to, that would be a development in Koha though, and probably that's the kind of development that sounds, the idea sounds simple enough, but it's the kind of thing that takes a lot of money and a couple of years to get into the system.
Could you set it up so that if the request is coming from here, they can get the form or the document, and if it's coming from there, it automatically goes to the never mind. That's even more complicated.
I can't think of a way that Koha can do this right now. I can't think of a good workaround right now. The Koha has the restricted page where it's restricted to whether you're logged in to the catalog or not. And what would really be good in Koha is if there was a restricted page for each library, for each branch. So that if you're logged into library A, you can see library A's restricted page. If you're logged into library B, you can see library B's restricted page. That's the kind of thing that Koha doesn't have right now, because, and a lot of this, of course, is because Koha, a lot of the libraries that are using it don't have multiple branches. They don't have, they're not in, it's not consortiums. So item records do have a 952U field, Heather says. So yeah, I just can't think of a way that you can restrict an item record so that you can only see the 952U if you're logged in. And if you're logged into a specific, and
I can't think of that either, but that does sound like a really useful feature for consortiums, the ability to reveal certain items only to the logged in patrons of that home library.
Yeah, that would be a really useful feature.
Could you do it by IP validation?
Not right now, I don't think.
Yeah, we've never been able to really implement IP validation because our staff is in such disparate locations, and they can be accessing dynamic IP servers that give them a registered IP from anywhere, even around the country, even if they're geographically located in our same building.
We have the same issue here where, we have 53 different locations, and about half of those locations are with smaller internet service providers that can't even offer these customers a static IP address. Some of our internet service providers in some of these towns are so small that that's not something that they offer. So we can't do IP validation because there's a pretty good chance that their IP is going to change. I have back-end access into Koha for I'm whitelisted for Bywater's SIP server and for the ODBC server. And since the pandemic started and I've been working at home part of the time, I've had to ask at least 5 times for them to to whitelist a different IP because my IP keeps changing. So it's not practical, particularly in rural areas, to do IP validation. That being said, in some consortia, where you're all bigger libraries, IP validation it's an excellent thing. So if we were all working at major universities, and if every member of the consortium was a major university, that wouldn't be a problem at all.
One of the other things I do is help the hospital produces a journal, and they want people to have online access. So I'm just using UFW to permit a certain IP or a range of IPs. Not suppose, no, that wouldn't work, would it? Never mind.
Well, those are all some really interesting ideas. Lauren, you mentioned you might have some other questions for us.
So yeah, hopefully they're not as big and complicated as that one. So this one, I think, is a yes or no question. All right, because I'm in a consortia, and we're wanting the 040 field to show which library is modifying or creating the record. Is there a way for it to automatically populate? So like if AAB library is logged in and they're cataloging, when they click on the 04 field, it will automatically put their library code in that field. Is that possible as a consortia? Like you could do that if it's an individual library because it would all be the same code. But because I have 25 different libraries and 25 different codes, I don't want, the SSL library to put in AAB. Is there a way to do that?
I think it also depends on which editor you're using too.
The majority would be using the basic.
Okay.
There's only like maybe 3, possibly 4 who would use the advanced. And we would, the 4 that would use the advanced would have no problem putting in the code.
The advanced editors, the people that use the advanced editors know what they're doing. They're better trained, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
I always use the basic editor or mark edit.
I think I don't think that there's a way to, because that is getting the 040 is getting that information from the MARC bibliographic framework, I'm sure. That's where it's being told. I'm looking at my MARC bibliographic framework right now.
Mm-hmm.
And my guess is that if I go and look up the 040 cataloging source, view subfield, yeah, it's our default, it's the default value for that framework. So one strategy would be to create a different framework for each library, which that sounds like a lot of work. And then you have a different, so you tell people if you're at this library, you use your library's framework. If you're at another library, that sounds like that would be a training nightmare. It sounds like it might be easier to train them to do it the right way to begin with than it is to train them how to use a different framework for each one. The other option I can think of is to use some kind of custom code like jQuery that would look at the, that would look at the logged in library, and then have it set up to do something different depending on which logged in library is logged in. In our system, none of our, we're the only library that has a MARC organization code. Our libraries are so small, they don't even have that. So everybody, when they catalog that, they're using the system's code in the 040. But the way that you would do that is you would need somebody to write some jQuery that looks up there in the upper right-hand corner of each screen. It's going to say, like mine says G. Williams, and I'm logged in at Northeast Kansas Library System. The code underneath there has the library's koha branch code. And so you would need to have some code that says if the branch code is A, then use A's MARC, then refill the 040 with the library's MARC organization code. And so that would be a bit of work on somebody's part. That's the kind of question that, are you a Bywater customer?
No.
No?
We're doing internal support because we don't have the money for.
Right. Yeah, you need somebody to write you some jQuery that's going to be able to do that. So.
Okay.
So there's a system preference called MARCOrgCode, and it says you can fill in your code there, and by default, MARC 20 on records will fill it in, but it also says this can be set at library's level.
Oh, really?
So you can add the MARCOrgCode in your library's administration area, and maybe if you leave that MARCOrgCode field blank, it'll fill in the library's code.
I bet it does. Let's see.
Okay.
That's a question you could answer right now if you went to libraries to see if you have the MARCOrgCode for each library in that field. I wonder when they added that. I don't think that's always been there. That's a new feature, isn't it?
All of mine are blank, so.
Yeah, so are mine.
But in the library's administration area, it says if not filled in, defaults to system preference. So it sounds like whatever's set in the library setting will override the system preference. So as long as you have the library set up, you should be okay.
All right, I'll have to. I'm still learning what can be done at the, I guess, the difference between the local library level and then the big system group. Because I live in the big system group world and don't go down into the local library world that often.
I just looked at what we have in our MARCOrgCode system preference, and it's got our NUC symbol. and I went to create a new record, but it didn't supply anything. I'm still trying to play with it. Oh, great. There we go. And I put something in the chat too about a new Bywater Solutions page on putting in a drop down for the publisher field. And I'm wondering if that might be an option to put in a drop down for the 040 and then they just pick it, but I haven't played with it. I don't know. But I like the MARCOrgCode solution.
I'll have to look that up. Yeah, no, the publisher field that Bywater did, I love, and I'm wanting that to do it with the language codes in the 041 field. Or actually in multiple fields. I'm like, oh, that needs to be in, like, there's several fields where that would be very helpful. Even in your subject fields. If you had the drop-down menu for people who don't do the whole authorities, it would kind of make it a little bit more standardization.
Well, I have to just say, have them do the authorities. Okay, I'll just back off now.
I found a blog post that Bywater did. Apparently, MARCOrgCode has been part of it. Was a preference added. That library in the library level was added in 1711, so it's been around only for a couple of years.
Okay.
And they did a blog post about it, and I posted the link for that in the chat box. It doesn't mention the 040, it mentions the 003. So.
Okay. All right. This next one, I'm hoping other consortia do. Is it possible right now, all of our libraries use the same URL link for the OPAC, which pulls up everybody. Like when they go to a search, the default is search all libraries. Is there a way for me to give library A a URL that the default is their library, and then give a separate website to library B where the default is B library? Is that, I'm not tech person, so it sounds like it should be able to, but.
I think it is. I think you are able to do that, but it's not, but I don't know how to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a way to like define different URLs for different library OPACs, and we don't do that either. So I'm not sure. It seems like there's a wiki page about it. I was trying to find that.
We specifically don't do that because we encourage everybody to look at the catalog as a whole. We, some of our libraries, particularly the really small ones, they're, we have like 5, 6, maybe 7 libraries that have less than 10,000 items. So we're always encouraging people to look beyond their individual library. And so we don't encourage them. We build the catalog specifically in mind, with the idea in mind that you're looking at the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
I think
ours, because the libraries are so widespread, would be good if we could do by group or region, because it's global. Because it's not helpful for Asia libraries to know what's in Africa first. It would be better if they saw all the Asia first.
Yeah, and any library in our system, can borrow from any other library and get things sent in the courier in less than 2 days. So it's not things don't have to cross continents.
See, in the admin page, I think there, what's a library group? Could that solve part of the problem? I'm just setting up another test site.
You can set up, you can put your different branches in groups and then set up search groups there. So that might, and then like in your drop down that says all libraries at the bottom, it'll have the groups. So that could be your key to picking your regions. And I put that link in the chat from the wiki. I don't know how useful that is. That's what I was thinking of, I think.
Okay. This next one is curiosity. We're trying to figure out how to handle our own journal index because we don't want to have to pay. Especially if it is journal and articles in which the organization we work for, they published. So in a sense, it would be like an internal journal index. Do you handle, and this is somewhat of a consortia problem because a local library would have no problem. Do you handle that in Koha? Where you index all the articles? How do you handle journals?
I've done something sort of like that with local authors and journals indexed in Medline. And I've also been thinking, okay, how would I index my, let's say, CD collection with a link to each track or MP3 collection? So it's possible, but
yeah, we do analytic cataloging records with the 7XX field links to the parent journal or anthology or conference proceeding. And depending, sometimes my analytic records are very good and thorough, and sometimes it looks like a simple index entry. There's just one or two subject headings, author, citation.
Yeah, let me share my screen again. Okay, how do I get back? Sure. Okay. I have to update this considerably because we just got out the printed 2019-2020, but let's say particular author, Andy Shore, and everything that has appeared in Medline under his name will be here. So
that's really cool, Fred.
Go there. Here's the abstract, DOI, which is in the 857 field. If we actually have access, that goes in 856. If someone has an ORCID, that's the 858. And here's everyone from MedStar. It involved a bit of tweaking of files, XSLT, is that right? Yeah, which is why we're still on 17 point something, because it works and I don't want to change it. And unless there's something really horrible going on with version 17, I see no reason to change. And then can also, let's go to advanced search, type and department, certain journal. So that may be kind of overkill for what you're doing.
No, we're kind of looking at that. Our problem is, so we're kind of to have a journal index that I guess one library would have, but not all the libraries would have access to print journals, not to just saying that this article is in this journal. I can't tell you if your library has this journal, because a lot of our libraries don't have the staff to link their records to the journal. Though I've also found it's a pain to remove the journal once you've used the analytic records, because you have to remember, where did I link this item to? And so I don't know if I want to do that for all of them. And if no one has the journal, I still want to retain the index. Especially because one day we might have the electronic copy.
Yeah, we have analytic records linking, to journals we don't have. And in our catalog, we are on the right-hand side, we have the, searchworldcat.org, that sort of thing yeah.
Okay.
I'm not finding one of those particularly right now to show you, but.
Okay.
Of course not. Everyone's watching you do it.
I know.
Could you do anything like that through
It's
the
not,
serials
we
module?
don't do anything like this at all. So I am absolutely no help on this. So.
You can put text in your 7XX linking field, but that would be, to say that, we don't own this title, but that would be a pain in the rear end.
Doing journal indexes for one library makes sense. It's once I add, but I don't want all 23 libraries to have individual journal indexes to their library. I'm like, that's a lot of duplication of work. That's a lot of storage. Your search results in Koha are not going to be pretty because you're going to end up with 10 or 20 records for the same article. Because every library did their own individual journal index with analytic fields, which is what we have now. And I'm like, how do we keep the information but make it still usable for the group? We are debating on maybe having an external journal index that's separate from the libraries, just so that all of our librarians can be putting the information into the index and maybe have it searchable within Koha, but there's only one record instead of 20 records for the same.
So could the librarians, someone has an analytical record for how to cook chocolate chip cookies in Cook's Illustrated, and those libraries that have that, they've got their paper index and they're looking, it's like, oh yeah, I have that too, so I add my item record to it for my library.
The fun would be that a lot of our librarians don't have time because the library is one of their 5 or 6 roles, and it's usually the lowest priority.
I understand that all too well.
Yes, exactly. I think a lot of us are nodding and understanding. This could also be a good project for information school interns, library school interns, indexing interns.
This solution probably won't work. But how about every journal issue as a separate bib and the articles as volumes or items? Can one item be owned by more than one library? Probably not, because it would need its own barcode.
Not items.
Okay.
The biggest concern I would have with are you considering, Fred, that you would have a bib for the journal and then a whole bunch of individual records, individual items for each issue, or for each article?
Okay.
Right
this is what I don't like about it. The bib record would be the issue of the journal, and items would be each article within the journal.
Would be each article within the journal. The big issue with having a bibliographic record for the title, and then a bunch of individual, and then a whole bunch of individual items attached to it, is that there is a limit to the size of a MARC record. And once you go over that limit, the records don't render properly. It takes a lot to go over that limit, but if you're talking about adding like a whole bunch of articles to a journal title, you would reach that limit pretty easily.
I've actually gone over the MARC record size. There's a publication where pretty much everyone who was at the conference was listed as a co-author. Okay, could you do something? Can you attach articles to individual issues in the serials module?
I'm not familiar.
You don't like that, do you? Okay.
I've just been wrestling with our serials module because I've been calling it periodical purgatory. Let's just leave it at that.
I understand.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that could be done, it's a very short-term fix, is you can upload all kinds of file formats to a bibliographic record. So if they have this local index as a PDF or a spreadsheet, something like that, that could be uploaded to a bib record for the journal. The maintenance to that would be horrible because you'd constantly be updating it, and someone has to download that and look at it. And again, I don't like it, and I'm clutching my metaphoric pearls, but
yeah, sorry, I have to go too.
We're approaching the top of the hour.
This is really fascinating conversation, but I have a staff meeting. Right?
So that was my last. Yeah, it sounds like there is no good way to do this. Just pick one, and or just what we've been doing is keep putting it at the bottom of the list.
I mean, it sounds like there are approaches, and in a consortium, I'm sure no one library is going to be happy. But perhaps there's something that would work better for most of them.
Well, and I'm not even sure if Koha itself is set up for all that layers. I'm wondering if there's something else that would be better.
There may be a discovery layer that could interface with a system that is more designed to be an index, periodical index database thing, because Koha is definitely a MARC format catalog, and it seems more designed to have a bibliographic record for a title that links to analytic records for the articles, and then this is how we do it, and those are in a MARC format. And you can take your indexing as a spreadsheet and use MARC edit to manipulate those records into basic brief MARC analytic records, but then they're going to want to be linked and they want that structure.
Mm. And I like the structure for books.
Yes. This would be a question that I would also perhaps take to the web dev group, since there might be people in that group who are more familiar with discovery layers, that sort of thing. Or again, the user services circulation group.
I don't know, based on my experience with the web dev group, and maybe Jason can attest to this too, because we are about half of the people that were at the last web dev group meeting.
Oh yes, it's very organic. We'll say that. One thing I don't know if this would help at all, but I know that Coral integrates with Koha to some degree, so you might take a look at Coral. It's open source as well. I can put the link there. I don't know if it's probably not exactly what you need. Like George, I have no real context for what you're talking about because we're a public library consortium. But it's an electronic resource management software that may fill the need, but may not. I mean, you could maybe finagle it.
Well, and I'm also thinking if I wait long enough, someone will build it.
Oh, and we have another mention, Margaret's Rain, but yeah, using Coral and EBSCOnet and EBSCO Discovery with Coral.
Yeah, our problem is we have no money. So we're trying to do more in-house or...
Yeah. Coral's open source, so you can
we love
go the Koha route with it, beat your head against it until you've got it working.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording.